Let's hit the rails once again, but this time for a New Year's Eve party. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well out there. Today we're going to talk about Terror Train Part 2. But before we get into it, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here, I greatly appreciate that. Now, I already reviewed the Terror Train remake that dropped on Tubi back in October around Halloween time. Terror Train Part 2, a sequel to that remake, dropped on New Year's Eve of 2022, and we're going to talk about it today. Now, Tubi bought the rights to Terror Train. They did a remake. I gave that remake a 6.5 out of 10. I thought it was an okay slasher film. Definitely made for TV, and you can tell it didn't have a lot of money. I was interested to see where they were going to take the sequel and how they were going to get everybody back on a train, because obviously it's called Terror Train, so that must take place on a train, or the title makes no freaking sense. So I was like, how are you going to get a returning cast back? Because why would you get back on a train after what happened to you? Well, they do explain it. Let's get into it a little bit. At the beginning of the film, we're reintroduced to Alana, and she is struggling with what happened the year prior. This film takes place about a year and 3 months after the first film. First film took place on Halloween. This one's taking place on New Year's Eve, like the original film from 1980 did. We see her struggling in class. She walks out of her medical class because she's having flashbacks to that night. She has a new roommate, a new best friend who's been taking care of her very closely and cares about her. And she talks her into going on this train, the same train that she went through all the horrors in the first film, the remake, and she talks her into it. Now, why you would step foot back on that train? Now, she takes it, they kind of explain it as her way of trying to get past her trauma from what happened the first time. The remaining cast from the first film is back, the survivors. The president of the fraternity is back. He is running this, and he even says the same thing, where we're just doing this to try to get past what happened and move on with our lives. Now, it's thin. It makes no sense why you would get back on this train. You could have a New Year's Eve party anywhere else. Why go back on the exact same train that you were almost all murdered in? Makes no effing sense, but okay, let's go along with it now. The conductor from the first film that survived is back, and we find out that her and Alana became good friends afterwards, but they have stopped talking for quite some time. The magician reappears magically in this film, because I thought he was dead as dog shit in the first film, but he's back. And he's performing again, but he is also suffering from PTSD on that night. Now, right after we got on the train, not long after we got on the train, like literally a minute after everybody gets on the train, somebody gets killed by somebody wearing the same clown mask from the original. Where'd they get the same clown mask? I don't know. But they got it. So right away, because at the end of the first film, we saw that Carney was still, well, twitching on the tracks. They don't say that she died. And in the beginning of this film, once the murdering starts and they start realizing the murdering has started, they assume Carney is back. And there's this little club, online club, led by the one girl who survived in the first film. This kind of murder club, and they're there just to increase their ratings online for clicks. So they're trying to make a commentary on that. It's sloppily done, and they don't really go anywhere with it other than it's kind of toxic. They're just there to capitalize on this atrocity that happened a year prior just for views and likes online. They kind of go into it. It really doesn't mean much here in the grand scheme of things. And pretty soon the killer sets his sights on Alana like they did in the first film. And they're setting up red herring after red herring once again like the first film. A lot of them don't make much sense. And even when they do reveal who the killer is, thinking back on the film, it would almost have been impossible for this person to be the killer, unless there's two and they saved one for a new movie if they're making a sequel. I don't know. There wasn't a whole lot on these two films, the remake and this one. There's not a whole lot online about this other than they shot it in Canada. The only thing I can find out about this one is it supposedly had a $3 million budget. Looking at the production value, I would say both films maybe were they combined, they shot these back to back, and both films cost a total of $3 million, maybe a little bit more, because this one even looks a little cheaper than the first one, and the first one didn't look like it had a high production value either. There's a little bit more CGI used in this one. There's some CGI blood. It looks like garbage here. It's directed by the same guy who directed the first one. It's very TV-like, only R-rated. It's definitely not as good as the first film in this new iteration of Terror Train. The first one I said it surprised me because my expectations were so low. So it only had to impress me a little bit to get me to actually like the film. And I thought it was a decent little slasher on Tubi. And God bless Tubi for taking a chance at doing these two films. But I will say at the end of the day, the first film is superior to this one. And that's not saying much. I gave that one a 6.5 out of 10. That first one, the remake, isn't as good as the original film. And this one's definitely a step down in quality from the scripting, the story. It's basically the same story again. Only we're dealing with some characters that survived that first one and ended back on the same damn train a year and a half or a year and 3 months later. Why still, their reasoning is still bullshit here. The kills, there's no stalking here really. The killer kind of just shows up behind people and kills them. There's no build up of suspense here. The kills just happen and we're on to the next kill or the next scene. And honestly, at the end of the day, this movie was kind of just boring. The girl who plays Alana, the woman who plays Alana, is good again. I think makes a good Alana in this film, and she's the anchor of this film. And everybody else is okay for what they're asked to do, which isn't really that much. But at the end of the day, this feels like an even cheaper version of the remake. And I found it boring and kind of predictable. And even though they're throwing in red herring after red herring at us, when they do reveal the killer, I was so underwhelmed, and the resolution happened so quick that it was like, okay, that was something that happened, and this is a movie I never really feel the need to watch again. It's okay. At the end of the day, I would give the Terror Train Part 2 a 4.5 out of 10. It's definitely a step down from the remake, and this was kind of pointless why they even made this film. This is a film that didn't need to be made. I didn't need a sequel to the remake. I thought the remake was fine for what it was, but they went ahead and they didn't have a lot of promotion for this. They dropped a trailer for like a week before it was going to release on Tubi. It's a kind of weird release strategy. And I know Tubi's a free app. And again, I give them props for taking a chance in doing these two films to begin with. But this one definitely was a big step down from the remake itself. So yeah, 4.5 out of 10 for Terror Train 2. Have you watched it yet on Tubi? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe button. Share this video. I would appreciate that. I'll be back soon with some more reviews. But until then, bye.